Welcome to the C-Suite Mentor, the place where you will learn the tools, strategies, and mindset to scale your business sustainably and build a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Teresa Cantley. As a fellow CEO, I understand what it takes to scale a business to 7 and multiple 8 figures. It's not necessarily what you might think. It requires a complete shift in how you think, strategize, and execute key actions in your business. My mission is to help CEOs step back into the driver's seat of their business by optimizing their operations, empowering their team, and staying in total alignment with their big vision. So, are you ready to exchange everything that hasn't worked for strategies that will? You're in the right place, so let's go. All right, I am super excited for this. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for hopping on here and jumping in. I almost said, thank you for joining us in the C-Suite Mentor podcast, but here we're not necessarily on the podcast, but we are live.
That's coming.
So,
that's coming.
Yes, it's coming. Exactly. But I'm just excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, this is so great.
As I've said to you, I met Chelsea. I was listening to a podcast from a mentor of mine. And I was listening to this podcast, and I coach leaders myself. I coach CEOs and their teams on being a better leader, really helping them build their business, fixing the cracks and all those things, all of the things. And I was listening to this podcast, and I was like listening to what you were saying. And I'm like, who is this Chelsea Grayson? Let me look her up.
Yeah.
And I was just wow, she is extremely smart and she's funny. And so I thought to myself, because at the end of the podcast, I remember it was you and Susan, and there was another woman that was on. And I remember you said at first that you should not be afraid to ask, to make the ask.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up reaching out to you, and I was like, hey, I liked your podcast. Everything that you said was so insightful. And here we are. You became my mentor.
Like a year later, after really getting to know each other and working together, and there was no way I was ever going to say no when you reached out. So, and the worst thing that I could have done would have been to say no, and you still would have been alive and thriving and successful. So yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask. Worst that can ever happen is you get turned down.
So tell us, just in case people don't know who you are, and if you don't know who Chelsea Grayson is, you are missing out on a lot of amazingness. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah.
Who is Chelsea Grayson?
I because you said the word story, now I've got to say there's 3 chapters to my story so far. Maybe there's a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, or whatever. But the first chapter. So I always like to say I'm a recovering lawyer. I'm a lawyer, but not your lawyer. I'm still actively weaponized, so I could spring into action if I needed to. But that chapter's done. But that first chapter, I thought was going to be my forever chapter. Actually, I ended up being a partner at one of the largest global law firms in the world called Jones Day. And I, rose up through the ranks. I was a summer associate there during law school.
Wow.
Got a permanent offer. Once I graduated, I took a year to do a federal judicial clerkship. We can go back to that actually, because it's kind of informative in the rest of my career. And then went on to Jones Day and, just worked my way up through the ranks and made partner there, and ended up running the mergers and acquisitions practice for the California region and co-chairing the global cross-border M&A practice for the firm. And really thought that I was going to stay and collect the gold watch and the pension and all of that. I loved being a lawyer. I actually miss it all the time. I find myself meddling in the lawyers' stuff, with the lawyers I work with now. And I found myself having to pull back. So I'm like, that's not your job anymore. But I absolutely loved being a zealous advocate for my clients. And I was a lover, not a fighter. I did deals, I wasn't, in court, duking it out, though that would have been fun as well. But I was working to put companies together so they could shed the lawyers and move on and make a whole bunch of money together, or I was helping them to sell, divest themselves of non-performing assets so they could continue to do much better in the future. So we were contributing to the economy, and that's truly how I felt about my job.
Mm.
And then, one day, second chapter of my career begins. So one day I get a call, cutting out a lot of irrelevant detail. I get a call from Colleen Brown, who was,
Mm.
again, cutting out a lot of detail. She was essentially the chair of the newly formed board of what was then the public company called American Apparel.
Yes.
Yes, I'll recognize as we're recording this that just about a few days ago, Netflix dropped a new documentary all about American Apparel. So
Did they really?
they did, yes. So
Whoa.
I'll self-refer here, but
Oh
thankfully
my.
I'm not in it. We all got called to be in it, and I think only like two people answered the phone call, and they're both in it. And they did great. I thought they did marvelously. Friends with the folks that were in it, but they were from the before times, and so it made sense that they would be in it. In any case, I would say the documentary, covers the bulk of it, using my phrase, cutting out a bunch of irrelevant detail. So anyway, so I got, but yeah, quite a story. And yeah, pour yourself 2 martinis before you start. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I got a call from the chair of American Apparel, and she was part of the new board, the old board essentially having been, they cleaned the slate, because of everything the company had been through, just before I got the call, which was, you know, lots of allegations of, sexual harassment and, other sexual harassment related charges. There were some misuse of corporate funds for personal use charges. There was a huge investigation ongoing internally at the company. There was an SEC investigation. The FINRA had sent off a few letters, as you might imagine. There was like $500 million worth of litigation into all of these claims. And the CEO and founder had been suspended for cause pending the results of the internal investigation. And the rest of the C-suite basically was gone, amidst
Yeah.
all this chaos. And so the chair of the board called me and said, well, the very first position I would like to fill so that we can get going on the future of American Apparel is the general counsel spot, because that's the spot that has to lay down the rules and then make sure that they're enforced. And that's
For
really
sure.
important amidst
Mhm.
this culture crisis, this liquidity crisis, this governance crisis, this legal crisis that we're currently going through. So, it took a lot of convincing, but she, her successful pitch with me ultimately was, look, you're born and raised in Los Angeles, Chelsea. American Apparel is, at that time, it was one of 3 public companies that was actually headquartered in Los Angeles. We've got a few more now. And she said it's the second largest employer in Los Angeles after the LAPD, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. And she said, the company employs over 10,000 people globally, but 6,500 to 7,000 of those folks are here in Los Angeles. And most of the dramatic majority of those people are immigrant textile manufacturing workers.
Hmm.
They're here only because of this company. If this company goes away, barriers to entry for another company like this are so high, nobody else fills that void. And all these people lose their jobs. There's nothing else they're currently qualified to do. And some of their immigration status depends on this job. So it would be catastrophic for them and their families. And she said, so don't you want to come and help save this company? Isn't that your civic duty? So if she was here, she would agree with everything I just said. She totally sold it to me like that.
Well, we've talked about this. We are the type of people who we love going into a burning building and paratrooping in, doing what needs to be done, and then paratrooping out. Yeah.
You said it, because this was a burning building, and you
Do
could
it a
see
lot.
it because it was right there in downtown Los Angeles, the big iconic pink, sewing factory, which was also the corporate headquarters. And if anybody has, ever been in downtown LA in the garment district, it's impossible to miss. It's at 7th and Warehouse, now it's a tourist attraction, but we had all 4 of those buildings, and it all happened right there. The iconic flea market was in the basement where you could go and get, our famous beautifully handed, white tees for 50 cents, because there was a little mistake on the stitch or something. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
all right there. People would come from everywhere, all 4 corners of the earth, to take pictures for Facebook and Instagram. And it was a whole vibe, And so I went in there and, you know, boy, we fought off all those things that I just talked about, and also unionization attempt. I had to do a full-blown trial at the NLRB, and you know, all the chaos that you can imagine. We did end up firing the CEO and founder, and put in a new CEO. And then about a year in to her tenure, we ended up doing a debt for equity swap with Goldman Sachs. That was our largest bondholder.
Oh, wow.
And at the end, we went into a planned 11 for that. And when we were merging, they said, we think that we need to put in a new CEO once again, and we think you'd be perfect for that. So I ended up being the CEO of American Apparel. We beautified it to go to market over the next several years. Ultimately sold it successfully to another public company called Gildan, which is probably on the back of a bunch of your t-shirts. And then Goldman Sachs called and said, hey, you want to do it all over again? Because we also own True Religion jeans, and come run that and do the same thing. So I did for the next couple of years and got done with that. And in the meantime, I'd collected a bunch of board seats because Colleen Brown, who I'd mentioned earlier, she actually at that point was just sitting on boards for a living. She'd gotten to a place in her career. And I said, boy, that's a model for what I think I want to do eventually. Let me start to put some board seats on my roster. So I collected some board seats in the meantime, and had also, of course, been on the American Apparel and True Religion boards. And so then after True Religion, I said, well, I'm going to get into that third chapter of my career. So I went into this 2.5 chapter of my career because one of the boards I joined was Spark Networks, which is a big NASDAQ company that owned dating apps like JDate. And I don't know, 4 years into my tenure there as a board member, they said, hey, you know what? You should be the CEO here. So I ran that company for about a year. We sold that. And then I said, all right, that's it. I'm now going to go actually into the third chapter of my career, which I'm currently in. So now I primarily just sit on boards of directors. And so, aside from those boards, I've been on the Morphe Cosmetics board and the Sugarfina board, the Delta Dental board.
Oh,
And I
wow.
currently sit on the board of Exponential Fitness, which is the largest global franchisor of fitness and wellness brands. So we own Club Pilates, Yoga 6, Pure Barre, Stretch Lab, which will revolutionize your whole existence. Beyond Meat, which is the big, publicly traded plant-based food company. Dan Gilbert, if you don't know his name, he owns the Cleveland Cavs, but he also did Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage. His holding company, Bedrock, owns Shinola, Detroit, and Filson 1897. It's the watch company. I sit on the board of that company. And then I sit on the board of Sunrider International, which is a big Chinese herb-based health and wellness products company. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. How many boards is that?
That's 4, but I'm still looking for another one, believe it or not. Because when you do this for a living, it's not some days it's a full-time job and other days it's not. And so I feel like you stave off, dementia by just keeping yourself busy 24/7. And I like it that way. So, yeah.
That is very true. My husband and I just had a conversation about that. We said, because I'm always oh, we have to stay healthy. Like, we have to keep our minds active. And he said the way that you prevent dementia is staying active, which is
Working
why
on
he didn't retire yet.
drinking tons of water, absolutely focus on your fitness. My executive assistant reserves every single day. She puts time on the calendar and she calls it whatever she calls it, but that's when I work out, and it's not negotiable, generally speaking, that, and just be happy, travel a lot.
Well, you used to, when you were younger, correct me if I'm wrong, because we had a conversation once about my big dream was to be a fly girl on In Living Color. You did ballet.
I did. I wish I could do that fly girl stuff, though. I envy all those moves. I always look at the girls taking the hip hop classes at the gym, and I'm like, damn, I'd like to step into one of those classes one day. And then I'm like, Chelsea, don't be ridiculous. You would look so stupid doing that class.
No, you would not. No, you would not.
Ridiculous. Yeah, I danced. Yes, my mother would be very happy that you've raised us. Yes, I danced. She danced as well, ballet until I was 17. And then you're at crossroads. You're going to go to college and, or whatever. And, I was never going to be a prima ballerina with the ABT or anything like that. So,
well, you never know.
I mean, you never know, but
everybody
really
has,
right. I'm like, I have villager stock, I'm like, I could trudge through the snow or something, with a scarf on my head, but I don't really have a ballerina's body.
I don't either. And in fact, when I was young, believe it or not, I was probably like 7 years old and I was taking ballet because my cousin was a Broadway dancer and she was very into dance. She was on several
Wow.
Broadway shows. So I ended up going to her dance teacher, one of her dance teachers. And I remember I was 7 years old and I was doing ballet and the dance teacher pulled me aside and she said, "I'm sorry, Teresa, you're never going to be a ballerina." She said, "You're
Mm.
too short and you're too heavy."
You were
So,
probably just normal.
so I went into hip
That's a
hop.
terrible statement to hear when you're a kid.
I
Jesus.
I know, but
Hello?
but I didn't let it stop me
Yeah.
because, like I said, okay, fine, I can't be a ballerina. I'm only 5 feet tall, barely. I'm like 4'11" and a half. So I'm just going to go into hip hop,
I love it, which
and then I
totally
did hip
welcomes
hop.
that completely. Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
know,
so cool.
so but I did still have to do some ballet, and I did. The other thing that I got really into, was modern,
Yeah. Like
like
Twyla
Alvin
Tharp.
Ailey
Yeah.
style, like Twyla Tharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was big.
Yeah,
That
what
was
was the
big.
name of that poor modern was it Isabella Duncan? She was wearing a scarf. She was in the south of France and she was wearing like a beautiful Hermes scarf in a
Oh yeah.
convertible. And they were driving and the scarf got caught on the wheel. And the guy driving the car didn't even know she was dead from strangulation until he looked over and she was just completely gone. Was it
Oh,
Isabella Duncan? I feel
I-
like. I don't know. My mother would know.
that name sounds. It sounds familiar. Yeah.
Terrible story. So yeah, it's been like new fear unlocked when I was like 8, and she told me that story, and I've always remembered that. Like horrible ways to die. That's
No
the one.
scarves.
No scarves in a convertible.
No
I
scarves.
keep
No
every time my
convertible.
kids go to Magic Mountain or what roller coaster rides, I'm just like, don't wear a scarf.
Hey, those things stick with us.
Yeah,
Like they stick with us,
terrible
and
image.
even to this day, I still have like some. That's why, like, long ago when I was younger, it had something to do with constantly washing my hands. I'm 50 years old, and guess what? I don't have fingerprints because I constantly wash my hands.
Me
So
too, constantly.
things stick with you. You can't
But
help it.
that's why, like, because then you dry your hands out pretty quick. But that's why, like, everywhere in the house, I have reading glasses, like 18 pairs throughout the house and the car, and then I have like hand lotion
Hmm.
everywhere in the house because I'm constantly putting it on because I always wash my hands too. And us ladies of a certain age can't afford to have dry skin anywhere.
No, we can't. We can't. We can't be flaky.
We can't be flaky.
No, we
Keep it
can't be
hydrated,
flaky.
ladies. Keep it hydrated.
No ashy legs here. You have to like
Absolutely.
you have to hydrate everything.
I don't even know how we got on this tangent, but I sort of love
I
it.
don't. It was the ballet because I asked you about ballet.
You know what? By the way, my dream though, because you like touched on my fantasy job is to be on Broadway. Could be Broadway
Really?
musicals. It could just be regular theater. But people always say, well, like, what would you have done had you not done this? I'm like, I'm so dramatic. I would have loved to have danced on Broadway, danced and sung on Broadway. It would have been
Mm.
just incredible. Yeah.
You would have been great.
I would have been good until I hit this age, and then the brain fog, you can't memorize your lines anymore. But
No, no, because you're hydrating, so you're
that's
you're
true.
preventing dementia. So you would be able to memorize your lines.
Damn straight. Yes. Maybe
You
I'll
know
try to
what? We
do
can still do it. We're still young.
we can still get there. Oh yeah, I know. I definitely feel young and all of that. Yes. Yeah, yeah, being on the boards, I guess, right? Yeah, and then you guys go live in New York for a little bit. That would be incredible.
New York. So New York isn't far from me. It's only an hour train ride. I mean, really, it would take an hour by car, but traffic is so terrible. But
Yeah.
when I was in fashion school, I used to go up to New York all the time. And
Mhm.
when my cousin was performing, we used to go up to New York all the time.
Mhm. I love it.
So
Yeah.
it's the greatest city. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in LA. I love LA. I love Philadelphia, which is where I live. But New York City, like that definitely has my heart for sure.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a pretty good football team.
Oh, the Giants,
Yeah, well,
the
Philly,
Jets. Oh,
Eagles, right?
Philly,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the
Yeah,
Eagles.
no, I love the Giants fan, so yeah, no, but,
Oh yeah, no, no, the Eagles are a good team. The fans are a little cranky at times, but the
not
the
this year,
Eagles,
right? That's
no,
every
no, no, they're very happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, the Eagles are a good team. And I have to admit, I'm not really a sports fan.
Me too. We we went I went to a Dodger game on Sunday, and I guess we lost, I'm told, but I just really go there. I
I
just go
always
there
go and
for
I watch the people.
hot dogs. Yeah, the people. We were in a very nice section. So yeah, I was trying to figure out, who's the richest hedge fund manager in this section. And yeah, just the drinks and the hot dogs, the sun, the peanuts, box of Cracker Jacks. I'm good.
And the people, and the
Yeah.
people, and the
Yeah.
people.
People. Yeah. 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 Watching for fly balls because we were in that section, right up at the front where the balls would come over the net. I'm just like, terror. That's another fear, getting hit in the head with something that's been thrown. Because as a kid, I mean, I think you too, right? I mean, I was born in the 70s. I'm
Mhm,
71. And
mhm,
yes, it was the generation of free to be you and me for sure.
mhm.
So, boys and girls, equal and you can cross over and, gender fluidity and all of that that was a thing that was definitely on trend, and thank goodness for all of that. I was convinced I could do absolutely anything that boys could do when I was being raised. But the thing that hadn't yet perfectly clicked was girls in sports. And so, and
That
so,
is true because, yes, I was born in the '70s, and I would agree with you. It was
right?
not. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like at all weren't into sports, then during PE at school, you could sort of convince your PE teacher, well, can I like help you clean up and organize the balls? Or can I go do cheerleading instead? Or, well, I dance, after school, so I don't want to get injured. So is there some way that I could do something else? And it was pretty easy to get out of. So I've never really been great at throwing and catching balls. So yeah, when anyone throws a ball around me, I'm like, I don't even try to catch it. I'm just like, oh my God, don't let it hit me.
Me too. Me too. I was like whenever we had like gym class and everything and we had to do something, I was always volunteering to be around the boys.
Yeah, well,
I was
no.
like, yeah, I'll play dodgeball.
Dodgeball. Oh my God, that's the scariest. That and tetherball.
Oh
Literally,
yeah.
the girls used to terrorize the other girls with tetherball. There was something so violent about that sport or game or whatever you want to call it. It was like, I didn't get into handball too.
Yeah.
Those were the three most terrifying sports that you could imagine.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree with you. And the guys, like when we would play dodgeball, they would like whip the ball at you. So you would end up going home with welts. It was
Right?
like,
What the heck? That is
and
not
my mom would
gentleman.
be like, oh, it just means that they like you.
And by the way, she was totally right.
Oh, I know. I know now.
Yeah. I mean, she was totally right. Anyway.
But back then it was just kind of like, So
But it's kind of funny because I mean, just going back to the career stuff, it's if you're not raised playing team sports, it actually is a little bit difficult when you get into corporate America to
mhm.
remember that it's a we, not an I. And there's absolutely nothing you're going to be able to get done if you get much further on in your career if you're not able to play well with the other kids in the sandbox. I mean, I think coming up as a junior lawyer, yes, it's a lot about I because you're trying to prove something and show your expertise and your work ethic and your learning abilities. But it doesn't take too long before no matter what discipline you go into, you're going to have to start participating within a team environment. And so yeah, if you don't have that already, like I didn't, you got to learn it on the fly, and it's actually pretty difficult. I learned some hard lessons, along the way with that. So
What do you think was the biggest challenge that you had as you were kind of going through your journey?
yeah, in that respect, I just always felt like I was a hard worker, and I liked my standards that I set for myself, and so it was hard for me to get into a team and experience the different levels of work ethic and the different ways people wanted to get things done. The first part, I just had to shed judgment because, yes, it's true. Some people just are procrastinators and they just don't work very hard, and those people are going to get weeded out eventually. But some people just have a different way of showing it that you don't have to stay up until 3 in the morning, in order to be a hard worker. You don't have to work around the clock in order to really be doing some deep critical thinking and churn out good work product. It doesn't take some people as long as it might take you. So that part I really had to shed just me judging, and I had to accept all styles, and in terms of how I always kind of felt like my ideas are, you know, right and my style is right and I have a certain standard of excellence and no, can anyone else really match that if I'm working in a team? That's just silly. That is absolutely, you have to take all observations and opinions and you got to listen to all commentary. It's amazing how many times if I just shut my trap in a board meeting, I listened to one of the other board members when I thought my opinions are intransigent. I'm never going to shed this POV on this issue. And then I
Mm.
listened to somebody else who's sitting in the same room, equally qualified, say something exactly opposite. And I'm sort of like, I'm so happy I shut up and just listened to you because I totally agree with that. Or at least I can see where somebody would be coming from with that POV. So maybe let's try to get to center. Those are really hard lessons.
Yeah. Well, so often people, because I run into it a lot with people that, CEOs that I work with, where they're trying to figure out how to work with their team better. And one of the big lessons that they have to learn is that when you're leading, one of the skills that you really need to master is listening.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Actively listening too.
Actively, not just listening, because so often, people, they listen and they're only listening because they still want to just respond. So, like, I've had people say, "Well, I'm listening. I'm a good listener." No, you're not. Like, you're not listening to really hear, not just with your ears, but with your heart
Yeah.
as to what the person's saying, because, you know, what they're saying, there are perspectives that might be different than yours. They might say something absolutely profound, and if you're not listening with your heart, you're gonna miss it. And I think that is something because, especially right now, I hear this thing called snowplow managers. These people
Mm.
who are all they wanna do is just kind of take on everything, and they wanna take all the credit for everything, and even though they're managing a team, it's always their like, how they wanna do it or their opinion because at just how people are evaluated,
Mhm.
especially middle managers, you hear a lot about that, but it's like how people are evaluated, how they're valued. So, of course, like, everybody wants to have their opinion heard.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's also really important just going back to your point of, actively listening to someone to w let them know that you heard them by repeating it back to them, you know? So not just to the point you made, not just waiting for them to finish, saying, "Yeah, I hear you, but here's what blah, 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 blah," and then going back to your own points. It's important to echo whatever it is they said in your own words and feed it back to them so they know for a fact you heard it and you're incorporating that into whatever you're gonna say next.
Mhm.
Because it's impossible to express somebody else's perspective without, internalizing it and sort of changing how you were gonna respond first.
Yeah.
And second, I've also learned over the years on this topic to, if somebody you're at a place where you're having a conversation with somebody, you're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Whatever it is they suggest, hey, maybe next steps you could talk to so and so on my side, or maybe you could read this memo that I wrote, and just understand a little bit better the color, or maybe you could take a look at these studies that have been done. And in my younger years, I may have been quick to say, listen, we've had this conversation. I don't know what else I could learn from those conversations or from those additional studies or whatever. This is a waste of time. Let's be efficient. Let's try to get moving. I say yes to everything at this point. As
Mhm.
long as there's not a critical sense of urgency, yes, I'll have that conversation with somebody else that you wanted me to. Yes, I'll read that study. Yes, we can schedule another call for next week when cooler heads might prevail. Whatever it is, as much as I can say yes to it, and eventually I'll make the decision I'm going to make, I'm not trapped. I don't feel like I'm handcuffed into doing anything, but I want you to understand that I considered all the things, you know? And that
Yeah.
just makes all the difference in human relations. And let's face it, at some point you get to a certain level in the stuff that we do, and all that matters are those human relationships.
Oh, totally. I mean, human connection. I mean, there's four things that human beings really want in life. One is that feeling of like that they're living into life. They're living life. Growth, that they have really good, relationships and that human connection. I mean, it's extremely important. It's something that I teach. It's something that is going to be in my new book that's coming out.
Which I've seen some parts of it. It's brilliant. It's so good. It doesn't even read like a book. It reads like somebody's just talking with you about something.
Do you think so?
Yeah, it's excellent. Excellent. And you come away from it, and you realized you learned a whole bunch, but nobody was preaching it at you, you
Well,
know?
I've had so many people over the years preach at me, and that's one thing that even with the business owners that I work with or the businesses that I run, I don't ever want to be preachy because I've had so many people preach at me and constantly like lecture me or tell me, and I don't want to be that like that with anybody else. And the thing that I always try and do is show someone through documenting or show someone. I mean, even going back to what you had just said about repeating back to what someone just said, like repeating it back to them and, even asking questions. Like I even do that when I'm trying to help someone to come up with a solution to a problem versus just
Mm,
telling them, here's what you're going to do, unless I absolutely
mm,
have to. But
yeah.
trying to repeat it back and say, so what I heard you say is XYZ. Do you think that's the best course of action? Or do you think, whatever it is to help them come to, again, form their own opinion or come to a conclusion. When I wrote the book, I kind of wanted to follow the same thing and I wanted to really show people here's how. First of all, I've been there. I get you. I'm not like somebody who hasn't made a ton of mistakes because I have. I've made a ton of mistakes. I've dealt with, as I said, the good, the bad, and the really ugly of leadership. So I wanted to write the book in a way that used story to show people, to tell them, to show them, but also have them come to their own
Yeah.
realization of, hey, you know what? Wow, that really seems similar to what I'm experiencing. And maybe this is how I can fix it.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
keeps that creativity and that connection with the reader. Like I wanted it to be much deeper than just, reading a normal leadership book. So
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, but are there books that you've read recently or in the past that you thought were really helpful in that regard that you loved?
so one that I read, well, this isn't a leadership book, but a book that I read that I really liked the way that it was written and how it was written is The Help.
I loved that book. Oh,
Loved it, loved the movie, just
oh,
about how, like, all
yeah.
of the different stories and then, like, again, the reader comes to their own like, wow, this is not good, this is bad, this is and how
Yeah.
can we make it better?
Yeah.
How can we make that shift? Another book that I really liked is and it was just the way that he did it, was a recent one that I read, was Protect Your Peace by Trent Shelton.
Mm,
More of a personal development book, but he
mm,
does talk about his stories and his things that he went through and then kind of shares like,
mm.
things that you can do. And it really his book was hugely about setting boundaries and really valuing yourself.
Mm, mm.
And I think, which that book really resonated with me because that was something that I had struggled with, as, most people do with imposter syndrome or where your value comes from. And, that book definitely really resonated
Yeah.
with
Hey,
me.
Trent Shelton, you're on notice now. You're going to have to do a comment for the book
I
cover of Teresa's book.
Trent, like I absolutely love that book. If you're watching this,
We'll tag him on this. So.
yes, we're gonna tag you on this. I would say I'm trying to think what else. There was actually another book that recently read. It's a book about grief. It was Moving On Doesn't Mean Letting Go.
Mm,
And the woman that wrote it, I met her at a book event I went to last year.
mm.
And she the book, she talks, and again, she weaves stories in, and it's a book about how to deal with grief and
Yeah,
how to deal with trauma. And the way that she writes it, she really talks about the death of her mother and
yeah,
how that impacted her, and she really kind of brings you into the scene,
yeah, yeah,
which was, I mean, the book itself was hugely helpful as it related to the death of my business partner and my best friend. But at the same time, again, like I just really liked the way that she wrote the book and how she brought you into the stories that she was telling. So most leadership books that I have read, even though they've been extremely helpful, are very much like cut and dry.
yeah, yeah. I do appreciate, and I'm sorry for your loss, but I do appreciate her name was Vanessa, right? Vanessa.
Vanessa. Mhm.
I appreciated when I read the excerpts from your book, how much you wove in, her and references to her and things that you guys had talked about, lessons you had learned from interactions that you had watched her have or things that she went through. And I think, first of all, it's a beautiful way to carry on her legacy, but also I think, yeah, it's really important to weave in personal loss and to how does that interplay with what you're doing every day, with your business and career. People don't know what other people are going through at all.
Mm-mm.
And to
No.
humanize other people and assume that they've also had loss and chaos and grief in their lives and how they might be using that as how that might be impacting them, good or bad, when they're coming to you in a career in a professional setting. So important. That and also understanding culture, the
Oh,
culture
totally.
person. If you're working
Totally.
with a Chinese organization, it's dramatically different than if you're working with a Latin American organization, or just understanding the practices, the beliefs, but also just the ways of doing business. Do you need to socialize for a long time? Does a yeah, no sometimes mean a yes, and you have to figure out when the actual yes happens? How many weeks does something generally take to push through versus some cultures where it's like, get it done yesterday, Understanding
Yeah.
backgrounds is just so important when you're in business.
And going along with that, I always tell people it don't matter what business you're in the business of people.
Mhm.
Whether you're a restaurant or a retail store or a a manufacturer, of cars or whatever you are, you're in the business of people. And I think the thing that, which again is why, when I wanted to write this book, I wanted to do it differently, because I think the thing, strip away all of the external pieces of leadership. The thing that is the most important is understanding people.
Yeah.
And the way that you understand people is simply, I mean, asking questions as to who are you? Who, and thinking about it in the standpoint of, and I look at this for myself, what do I want people to experience on the other side of me? And
Yeah.
that helps me to show up differently, just, as a person, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, because I want people to have an amazing experience on the other side of me, and I want them to know that I see them. And I think that comes from, even when I was younger, going back to the ballet story, oftentimes I didn't feel seen, and I have such a I love people. I love people's stories. I love hearing their stories. I love asking questions. But I think that also helped to shape like how I want to lead, but also how I want to teach people how to lead, so we can really shift leadership
Yeah.
and really build better businesses, but also build a better world.
Does that get in the way though? I mean, where do you draw the line? Because I had to learn this early on that if I'm a leader, yes, I want to get to understand and know everyone and see what makes them tick and all that, including my subordinates. But I have to let them know I'm not their friend. I'm not their therapist. I've said this a lot publicly. But that, if you don't do that right, and I haven't always done it right, you develop a pretty nasty, you know, pe- people don't, you become the ice queen or something. I don't know how else to say it at the top,
Yeah.
that's not great either. Have you found that to be difficult, and then how have you sort of combated that problem? When people that are working for you feel that because you've developed that interpersonal connection that they can cross the line or take advantage.
Yeah, I think for me, it came from learning how to set healthy boundaries so that when I'm talking to a person and I want to learn more about them, learn about like what are the things that you care about? Like what are the values that you care about? What is it that you like about this job? Like what do you do outside of here? Like how can we help you to have a better experience here? And just asking asking more questions and listening more. But I think the other thing that kind of has headed it off even before it gets to the point where it starts to go down, because I wasn't always good at it. Like I had times where people thought like I was their friend and then they took advantage of that, or other times where people thought, "Oh, she's mean." Like, and it wasn't. It was just that I just, was very strict on certain things. And along the way what I've learned, and I think one of the most important things is not being afraid to have to be transparent, B, have direct conversations when you need to have them. So it's asking specific questions and really like getting to understand who the person is, but also it's setting up those healthy boundaries. And I think again, if somebody starts to cross that line, not being afraid to say in a nice way, there's a boundary here.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I care about my employees. And sometimes I even say this up front. I care very deeply about the employees, but I'm also here to have that balance where we have to make decisions that are right for the business. And if we do that, it's going to benefit you.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Good stuff, lady.
good, good stuff.
Um,
So before before I let you go, because I know you have a busy schedule, but
we
this
never
was
really let each other go, though.
I know, and I could sit here and talk to you for hours, but I know you have a busy rest of your day. But so tell me, what do you think? First of all, what do you think makes a really good leader?
Mm. Yeah. I I do think it is some of what we've been talking about, making sure that you listen to all perspectives, and incorporate all of that into where you ultimately go, but then also being decisive. That's the one thing we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
You absolutely, if you're a leader, you got to lead. And by the way, a lot of people want to be led. Some people that are being led now have aspirations of being a leader, but most people who aren't there yet, they are looking for a leader and they want to feel confident that they've got the right person at the top. Otherwise, they start to kind of spin off into their own thing. And you get the water cooler talk and you get the people looking for other jobs and being vulnerable to recruiting and all of that. So they want someone who's confident, not cocky, a person who listens but makes decisions, a person who, to allude to a concept that you mentioned earlier, understands that you can succeed from failure. So it's okay for us to fail. Maybe to use the trite phrase, maybe you have to fail fast, I don't know, fail forward, whatever. I mean, all this corny stuff that happens in corporate speak these days, but you can fail one way or the other and understand that you can snatch success from that. And that's usually where you do snatch success from. I mean, I'm actually reading a book right now. I've just started it, and I think it's called Know What Matters, and it's by the guy who founded Panera Bread,
Mm, mhm,
which
mhm,
was originally Au Bon Pain. And
mhm.
Au Bon Pain was sort of a failing bakery. He figured out how to, I think, franchise it or make it into, a chain. And then they figured out that this little kind of fledgling division they had started called Panera was actually the thing. So they slowly phased out Au Bon Pain, elevated Panera, and then the rest is history. It's like the most successful restaurant chain ever in history of that or something like that. But they failed and failed and failed. I think he went at it, several times before they were actually able to get it done. You know, I mean, listen, the American legal structure is actually set up for it. That's why we have a Chapter 11. You can file shed yourself of liabilities, emerge restructured, and completely turn your entire business around, so we're actually set up for that from a legal perspective and a legislative
Yeah.
perspective in this country, more so than others. So I think once people understand that you have a culture of, if this isn't working, we're going to figure out something else and we're going to pivot and go to that other thing. So failure's okay. I'm listening to all perspectives, but I'm going to make a decision, and I'm going to stand by that decision. I will live or die based on that decision. And if we die, we're going to rise from the ashes and phoenix ourselves into the next phase of success. I think all of those things make for a great leader. Again, I think also a little bit of hierarchy never hurt. Also with leadership, I think people kind of want to see it, this whole flat structure thing that's been happening. I lean into it a little. I don't think it doesn't have to be fascism or like a, royalty or whatever, but there's got to be a little bit of division, just even for aspirational purposes, so
Yeah,
people have something that they're looking to as a goal, that they can become.
for sure.
I think reminding people when you're a leader that even you have a boss. I mean, I always talk about, the quintessential, what looks like the ultimate boss is the CEO, of each organization. But the CEO has a boss, and that's the board of directors, whose kind of number 1 through number 10 primary functions are to hire and fire the CEO. Even the board has a boss, though. In a public company, it's the public shareholders. In a private company, it's the big, the main investors in the company. And those investors have their LPs to answer to, and so on and so forth. Everyone at some point has to answer to someone until you get to be, even Jeff Bezos has to answer to his shareholders, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No one's
So
untouchable.
yeah, no one's untouchable. And I mean, you look at Elon Musk, for example, who's a guy who toggles between the richest person here, the richest man there. Even he got taken down a few notches when he got into the administration. That made some people unhappy, and his car sales went like this, and his stock price went like this. And what happened? He cut bait and went back over to try to, fix his kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think knowing that you're not untouchable, but also reminding the people who are, your subordinates that you're not untouchable, reminding them that you're flawed and you have people who are going to be judging those flaws, just like you're going to be judging their flaws or whatever and critiquing them, you're getting critiqued. So they kind of see, the similarities and understand why you might be motivated to do certain things when you're leading them.
Yeah.
Goes back to that human element you're talking about. We've all got a boss. We've all got our own flaws, our insecurities, our feelings of what we want to accomplish. And we might not be communicating that with you because you might not be the proper audience for that. You might not be at that level with us and deserve to hear it, but just know those things exist generally,
For
unless you're
sure.
dealing with that classic psychopath. And we've all encountered one or two of those in our careers, and then
Oh, yes.
there's no helping that. So if you figure out that's who you're with, then you move to a different entity. But
No, recognizing that, people have flaws and you have flaws. That's how we become human
yeah,
is, yeah, none of us are perfect. So,
yeah,
well, I might be, but you might be.
your hair is certainly perfect.
Kidding.
I have
So
envy.
one last quick thing. I just, and before I ask you this last really fast question, thank you so much. This meant the world to me
My
that
pleasure.
you agreed to come on here with me, and it just means the world to me that I have you as my mentor, my friend, and that I took the risk and was brave and sent that message and said, "Hey, I have a couple questions and, would you be willing to meet with me?"
There was no way I was going to say no. But
So just really fast before I let you go, what are you most grateful for? One
oh
sentence
boy,
or two sentences.
my family is happy and healthy. My children, my parents, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I've got a teeny little extended family, and we're all very happy and healthy in a close knit little group. And can't ask for more than to have your loved ones surrounding you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so very much. I so very much appreciate it. And I hope that everybody who has been watching us or listening that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I mean, this is afternoon tea, and I know you drink tea. You drink tea. I love afternoon tea.
Me too.
And it is like my favorite thing, especially working with an Irish pub. But yeah,
That's a
so
little
thank
tea with whiskey, but okay.
Exactly. So thank you so much for joining me. And everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Hey there. Thank you so much for listening. If you found value on this show, please follow the podcast so you never, ever miss an episode. And I would love, love, love if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for me. Even better, share the show with a fellow business owner ready to step fully into their CEO leadership role. Because right now, more than ever, the world really needs next level leaders. And by the way, did you know you can text me all your questions and get real-time feedback? You absolutely can. Just text the word CEO to me at 610-215-2838 to get connected. One last goodie for you before I go. If you're ready to scale your business and have a co-creator working right by your side, my C-Suite Mentor Program may be perfect for you and your possible new second in command. Just visit thecsuitementor.com to get started.